Some say GoPro MAX is nothing special, but I've been using it every day for the past month and I disagree. I have over 60 360 cameras and it's become one of my favorites, but at the same time it can also be frustrating. Here's why. How does the GoPro MAX compare to other 360 cameras, including the popular Insta360 One X after the November 2019 update? What are its strengths and its weaknesses? What's it like to use in real-life, everyday situations? Who is this camera for? And should you buy it if you already have a GoPro Fusion, Insta360 One X, or other 360 cameras? In this GoPro MAX versus Insta360 One X comparison, we'll take a look at the GoPro MAX's key features, its usability for shooting and editing, and its image quality for both photos and videos. Now, GoPro MAX has the same resolution and almost the same image quality as its predecessor, the GoPro Fusion. Its improvements are instead in its usability. It's one of my favorite cameras for shooting. My favorite feature is the touchscreen. The touchscreen really changes everything because until now, almost all other 360 cameras didn't have a touchscreen. Well, they were built on the premise that with 360 cameras, you could see everything and you're going to capture everything anyway. So what's the point of adding a touchscreen? But having a touchscreen makes it so much easier to change the controls, the settings. It makes it so much easier to use. The menu structure follows the menu of the GoPro Hero 8 and it's very intuitive. I also like the two customizable buttons for each mode. If you want to see the settings and buttons that I use, check out the link in the description. Now, because the in-camera controls are so good, I almost never need the phone app. The touchscreen can also be used for previewing your shot, but the preview is not in 360. You don't see the full 360, you only see one lens. And the other thing is, it's not stabilized, so it's really hard to use it to review 360 photos or videos. 360 photos, even if they're stitched, they're shown in equirectangular format, so again, not terribly useful for reviewing 360 photos. But what's useful with the screen is I can check the exposure. I can also see if there's for dust or scratches. It's much more useful for the touchscreen than for reviewing images or previewing composition. My second favorite feature is the Hero non-360 mode. The Max is the first 360 camera to have a non-360 mode with real-time stabilization. So that means there's no stitching or processing needed. The video is ready to use straight out of the camera. But maybe you're wondering, what's the big deal? You can shoot in 360 and then reframe it to non-360 later on, right? Well, sometimes you don't need to shoot in 360. For talking head videos, for example, you know what you're going to show. There's no need to change angles. So shooting in 360 would only add an unnecessary extra step of having to convert the 360 into a non-360 video. That's why sometimes I use a GoPro Hero or DJI Osmo Action. But with the Max, I usually don't need to bring an action camera anymore. I can shoot in Hero mode and it works the same way as a regular action camera. The video is usable straight out of the camera with stabilization. No converting or editing needed. Now the image quality is a bit lower than a GoPro Hero, but it's quote good enough, especially for talking head videos. And in return you get even better stabilization than the Hero 8. You can even turn the camera upside down and it will still remain level. The Hero mode also has a unidirectional microphone, which is very good at isolating your voice. 360 audio test, 360 audio test, can you hear me? So audio test, it's really noisy here, can you hear me? Another benefit, I found that the video looks sharper in non-360 mode than in the 360 mode. So I love the GoPro MAX's Hero non-360 mode. It's one of my favorite features of the GoPro MAX. But it's also a little bit frustrating because once you start recording, you can't switch lenses anymore. Now of course you can turn the camera toward whatever you want to show, but then you can't see the screen anymore and the microphone is no longer facing you. Note also that the non-360 mode is not an automatic overcapture mode. It uses only one lens, and you cannot keyframe the video the way you can with the 360 video. Despite its limitations, I do use the non-360 mode very often. It's one of the reasons I love the Max. Another thing I like about the Max is how fast it is. Startup is really fast. Quick capture is also very fast. 1, 2, 3. One of the strange features of the Max is the so-called power panel mode. Some reviewers were very impressed by it, but I found it gimmicky. It's actually just an equirectangular 360 photo that's been cropped. It's not even level, so you have to make sure that the camera is perfectly vertical. Here's a hint. If you want to shoot a power panel, just shoot a 360 photo instead. Then you'll be able to straighten it and crop it however you like. Or maybe view it as a 360 photo instead. Another so-called feature is the folding GoPro mount, but to me it is more of a disadvantage. 360 cameras have to be aligned with the selfie stick to make the selfie stick disappear. With the GoPro mount, the Max can flop over when the selfie stick is shaken. I would have much preferred a 1/4-20 tripod hole instead. For Wi-Fi connectivity, the Max is a lot easier to connect to the app than the GoPro Fusion. The Wi-Fi signal is also very strong. I was able to connect the Max as far away as 52 meters or 167 feet. With the Insta360 One X, I could connect up to 41 meters or 137 feet. Mobile editing is improved. Like the previous version of the app, you can convert your 360 video at full resolution to a non-360 video on your phone. You can do that either with keyframing or with an overcapture mode, where you move the phone like a virtual camera. Unlike the Insta360 One X, the GoPro app can do roll correction. The iOS version of the app can also control transition speed like ease in and ease out, but the Android version doesn't have this feature yet. Another cool feature for editing is that you can edit your non-360 photo or video together with other non-360 photos and videos from other cameras, including your phone. Now please note, all these benefits in the mobile app also apply to the GoPro Fusion, so that by itself would not be a reason to upgrade to the Max. The biggest problem in the mobile app is the limited sharing options for 360 photos and videos. You can share them to Facebook or YouTube easily, but if you want to save your 360 photo or video to your phone gallery or camera roll, you can't. Instead, you have to share it to something like Google Drive and then download from Google Drive to your phone or gallery. It's cumbersome and really bizarre because literally every other 360 camera app can save your 360 photo or video directly to your phone. And so this is probably one of my biggest frustrations with the GoPro Max. For desktop editing, the Max finally has an app with keyframing capabilities, which you can also use with the GoPro Fusion. As of November 2019, this app is available only for the Mac. For Windows, you have the Max Exporter for batch exporting, but it has no keyframing capabilities. Export formats include H.264, H.265, ProRes, and Cineform. The biggest improvement for the desktop app is the stitching speed. It's my third favorite feature. The Max's videos are actually almost stitched, and that's why stitching is very fast compared to the Fusion or One X. And unlike the Fusion, it is possible to stitch without a graphics card. Hopefully, they'll fix the desktop app soon. Note also that the desktop player app with keyframing also works with the GoPro Fusion, so again, the desktop app is not by itself a reason to upgrade from the Fusion to the Max. So how is the image quality compared to the Insta360 One X, especially after the November 2019 update? Let's talk about the photos, then videos, then special situations.
You retrieve 2 containers of coaxium. This would greatly help the resistance.
GoPro Max's photos look slightly better than those of the Insta360 One X. They're a little more detailed while having similar dynamic range, but One X has an HDR mode while GoPro Max does not. The Max's stitching for photos is smoother by default, but if you use the One X's stitching calibration option, the stitching can sometimes be almost as good. The Max also has better flare resistance than the One X. Both the Max and One X have similar colors and hues, but Max has higher saturation. There are three issues with the GoPro Max photos. Number one, they're not level. You have to straighten the horizon using a third-party app such as Edit360. Second, you don't have as much exposure control compared to the Insta360 One X. Third, there's no raw DNG mode. Now let's look at video. The biggest difference between Max and One X is that Max videos look more processed. For detail, Max and One X are similar, although Max has more aggressive sharpening settings. For dynamic range, Max and One X are also similar, but with One X's HDR video mode, One X has better highlight range. On the other hand, Max has better flare resistance and One X has a red dot flare. One X added a tone mapping effect called Color Plus in November 2019. It gives videos an HDR look with brighter shadows, but in some scenes it looks flat until you increase contrast. For stabilization, the GoPro MAX and Insta360 One X are both excellent, but in this side-by-side test, I found that the GoPro MAX had better stabilization than the Insta360 One X. First, the GoPro MAX had better roll correction. You can see here that the GoPro MAX remains perfectly level, whereas with the One X there's a slight rolling from side to side. Second, there's a little bit of drifting in the Insta360 One X. By the end of this video, the One X was pointed in a different direction, whereas the GoPro MAX remains pointed in the same direction. But Max has three issues. First, the Max's GoPro mount means that it is more susceptible to vibrations and flopping over. Second, Max has a drifting issue. Third, Max has a forward-facing mode where the video points in the same direction as the camera, but this mode can be unreliable in active situations. For video stitching, the Max is smooth, but if you look closely, it has waviness along the stitch line. That's the other big problem with the Max's video. Alright, so now I'm going to test the Insta360 One X and GoPro MAX for audio quality. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX non-360 mode, tilted 2 segments. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX non-360 mode, tilted 2 segments. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX non-360 mode, tilted 2 segments. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX, tilted 4 segments, non-360 mode. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX, tilted 4 segments, non-360 mode. Insta360 One X versus GoPro MAX, tilted 4 segments, non-360 mode. Now let's look at special situations. First, slow motion. In non-360 hero mode, Max can shoot at 60 FPS for half-speed slow motion. But when shooting in 360, Max has no slow motion mode. This is one of its biggest disadvantages compared to the Insta360 One X. Second, underwater and rudder shots. Max has a replaceable lens cover and it protects it from damage. It's also useful for underwater shots because the spherical lens can negate refraction in shallow water. But there will be a drop in sharpness and the lens cover cannot go deep underwater because it's not totally watertight. In real life, it's hard to use the lens cover because even if I do my best to clean it, the lens looks dirty. The One X has a venture case that has glare as well, but for some reason it's easier to keep it clean. For clear underwater shots, the One X has a dedicated dive case that still lets you control the camera. The Max can use a third-party case, but you won't be able to control it. Max has a time-lapse and hyperlapse feature. In 360 mode, the hyperlapse looks smooth, but unlike the One X, I can't change the time-lapse speed in the middle of recording. There's also no motion blur effect. There's also a non-360 hyperlapse mode which can set the hyperlapse speed automatically based on how fast you're moving. It also lets you switch between real-time and hyperlapse at the tap of a button. I really wish they would add these features to the 360 hyperlapse mode as well. Max has a built-in GPS that can add an overlay to non-360 videos. One X has this feature too, but you need to be connected to your phone's GPS. For a low-light performance comparison between the Max and the One X, check out my other video. So should you buy the GoPro MAX? Well, first of all, to everyone who said that it's just a mediocre camera, there's no reason to upgrade, I disagree. See, until now the market leader has been the Insta360 One X. Why? Because it has great image quality and excellent ease of use and usability. And GoPro MAX has done something that no other competitor has done, which is to make a camera that's actually arguably easier to use than the Insta360 One X. Well, first of all, you have the touchscreen. It makes it easier to change settings. Second, you have the non-360 mode for situations where you don't need 360. And third, the stitching speed is really fast. So does that mean that the GoPro MAX is better than the Insta360 One X? Not quite. That's because the Insta360 One X can do some things that the GoPro MAX can't do, such as the slow motion and the no-stitch premiere workflow. So who's the GoPro MAX for? Well, I'd say it's more for casual users. People who aren't super particular about image quality and they just want a camera that's easy to use and very convenient. If that's you, then the GoPro MAX is an excellent choice for you. On the other hand, if you're a quote-unquote serious user and you have a particular artistic vision in mind, a certain effect that you want to achieve, then the Insta360 One X can do a lot of things that the GoPro MAX cannot do. And you're probably better off with the Insta360 One X. The other thing is that there are two cameras that are coming up in December that you need to be aware of. One is the QCam 8K and the other is the next Insta360 camera. If you want to learn more about those cameras, then check out these videos. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in 360.